Welcome to the Bookies Plus weekly betting show where you'll get free picks for week 8 from 3 or 4 of our gambling experts. We'll find that out soon. You can also get our free picks at bookies.com/bookpicks. Let me say that again. I'm stumbling over myself. Free picks, bookies.com/picks. Not only do we have free NFL picks, we got you covered for just about any other sport you want to wager on. Don't forget, we also have a new episode of this show every Wednesday for the remainder of the NFL season. This week, we'll have picks for sure, we'll have them from Adam the ATM Thompson, one of the premier national handicappers, over 60% in the last 3 years. Nick the Whale Whalen, he's been in the industry for over a decade, focused on NBA, NFL, works at RotoWire, often at VSiN and DraftKings as a guest analyst. We're hoping to have Bill Speros here shortly. We'll see if we get Bill here. And then otherwise, I am Jim Coventry. All right, let's get right to the picks here. And we are going to, good, perfect timing. Bill Speros is in the house. We're going to go right to Adam and start out with the Chargers pick.
Hey, Bill, how's it going? Let's see. Chargers. That's who we're looking at, right? Chargers.
Yes.
Well, they're taking on a Saints team that anybody who watched Thursday, it's impossible to pick them until Derek Carr gets back. Olave's back, which is nice, but they looked really bad. The Chargers, they just lost to the Cardinals, 17-15. A Cardinals team that I don't really like their defense, but the Chargers, you could see they should have scored more. They had 5 scoring drives. They all ended in field goals. Justin Herbert threw for about 370 or 349 yards. Just couldn't get in the end zone. Get in the end zone a couple of times against these Saints, and that defense ranks number 1 against basically every stats, including points per game. I think they can, at home. I like LA here. Their offense doesn't do much, but I think it can do enough as long as it can get that lead. As long as it gets a lead, some of those field goals turns into touchdowns, which they should. I think -7 is an okay number.
And it certainly helps that the Saints don't know how to tackle anymore on defense. It's a wonderful thing for the Chargers when they pound the rock. Bill, welcome in. You're looking at the Bears -2.5 against the Commanders, me as well. So I'll let you go first and I'll pile on.
Yeah, I know this has moved a little bit on the Jaden Daniels news. I think he's going to play. I'm not really focused on that here. I'm more focused on Chicago's defense and its ability to keep the game in a place where Caleb Williams can win it for him, unless, of course, he makes a mistake or turns the ball over. I just think Washington's defense is not quite ready for Caleb Williams, and I think that's really this game here. This game is how is Washington's defense going to balance out Chicago's defense. So I'm really looking at this in terms of which defense carries the edge, and to me that's the Bears.
Yeah. Anything else on that one, Bill?
No. I mean, I wouldn't really focus too much on Daniels. We saw a little movement today in that line, so there might be like concern that he's not quite 100% and that he might be limited in what he can do. But I think he's going to play. I don't think that's a concern. And again, frankly, I think this game will be decided by defense and turnovers, and I like Chicago in that case.
Yeah, and the Bears have an elite pass defense, and that is something that this Washington team has yet to see. We like the fact they played the Ravens, but ultimately the Ravens are a bad pass defense. They've been all year. And when the Bears have the ball, earlier in the season, they were struggling on their interior offensive line. It's gotten a little better, but Jonathan Allen, the defensive tackle, went on injured reserve a couple of weeks ago. It's a massive loss. He's not the game wrecker he was a couple of years ago, but he was still a real plus player for them. They really have nothing on the Washington defense that can slow the Bears. The Bears have made their run game very simple. They were making it complicated in the first couple of weeks for DeAndre Swift. He can't read. He has no vision. So when they made more one-cut runs, all of a sudden, he looks good again. And obviously, Caleb Williams, I mentioned this in one of our previous shows, spatial awareness in the pocket. Every week it gets better. The Bears decided from a philosophical standpoint, to just throw him in. They didn't manage him in the first couple of weeks. They let him take the lumps, let him get used to the speed of the game. And he has stepped up really, really well. This Bears offense comes out of the gate from their bye week. They should be rested. They should be flying fast. DJ Moore has a massive advantage here. I do think the Bears win this one fairly easily. Nick, you like the Kansas City Chiefs. Talk about that game for us.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize, guys, if I looked confused for like the last 5 minutes. I was getting like a crazy echo in my feed. So it's not that I was disagreeing with any of your picks. I was just trying to sort that out. But we're all good now. Yeah, Jim, you want to
self, the luckiest man on the face of the earth. You hear an echo?
Yeah, apparently it's back now. I don't know.
Okay.
I approach these big spreads with caution. It's worked out the last couple of weeks. We saw the public and saw a lot of favorites clean up the last 2 weeks, and you do wonder if that's coming around. But as long as this is hanging under 10, guys, I really like Kansas City here. The Raiders are a team that feels like they fall behind every single game, and that's true. They've fallen behind by double digits at some point in every game so far this season. They're just the fourth team to do that in the last 30 years. I don't know that you could get away with it against Kansas City. I know the offense continues to look clunky. I know Patrick Mahomes has more interceptions than anybody since the start of last season, which is crazy. Even crazier somehow is that Sam Howell is number 2 on the list despite not playing at all this season. But I think this is a game that the Chiefs can win defensively. I think they could completely suffocate everything that the Raiders want to do on offense. We saw Alexander Mattison get heavy usage last week. Good luck running the ball on this Kansas City team. I think this should be a pretty nice spot for the Chiefs, even if you don't think it's a high scoring game offensively. The total's only at 41.5, but I think this could be, a 27-3, 27-6 type of game for Kansas City. And I usually don't like to bring these type of elements into my handicap, guys. But remember, I think it was back in July during training camp, there was that video going around. The Raiders are, mocking Patrick Mahomes. They got the Kermit the Frog puppet out there. And Mahomes was asked about it. And he's like, yeah, we'll deal with that, when we get to week 8. So, I don't know if the Chiefs are capable of hanging 40 on anybody right now, but I don't see this as a letdown spot at all. If you're getting it under 10, I'm taking KC. Well,
Nick, don't forget Christmas Day. The Raiders embarrassed the Chiefs. That was their last meeting, so they got that going for them as well. So that's an extra little bump of motivation they certainly will have. So good call on that one. Let's go back around the horn a second time. Bill, you like the over and under on the Colts and Texans game. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I do like the under. It was 46 or 46.5, around that neighborhood. These teams are averaging about 43 points a game. The Texans tend to go under at home. They're 6-0 on the under. Last 6 games as home favorites. Their defense is solid. It's 4th against the pass, 8th against the rush. Anthony Richardson, I think they're going to let him run all day. I mean, he had 56 yards rushing last week, but he only threw for 129 yards. The Texans will take that all day and then some, and they'll be content to just work the ball, work the clock, and grind this one out, keep the Colts at bay. I just think you'll see, you got the storyline of 2 young quarterbacks, potential track meet. But this is, again, I think we'll get into the time of year where you're going to start to see these defenses emerge like, we keep seeing in Kansas City.
Adam Thompson, Russell Wilson made his triumphant return to action. George Pickens was a happy man. You like the Steelers this week. Why don't you talk about that one?
Yeah, Russell Wilson's entrance into this offense actually made him a 2-pronged attack. Now teams actually have to pay attention to the pass game, and that opened things up for the run game. So I think that really helped them out. They scored 37 points, a season high against a Gents defense that's far more dangerous than this Giants defense that they're going to be facing this week. Again, in prime time, again at home. If Daniel Jones can only manage 3 points against the Eagles after losing Andrew Thomas, what's going to happen when he faces a defense that just held Aaron Rodgers and all of his weapons to 15 points? So I think you have blowout city here. The line is about 5.5. I like that line. I'm totally fine with that. We'll let Russ cook for at least one more week.
Yeah, George Pickens will be happy, man. You're right. Good call on the Andrew Thomas loss. That was immediately impacted and felt. That line, he's an outstanding left tackle, and they're going to have a rough run without him. We saw Malik Neighbors really struggle in the second half of that game, too, largely in part, I think, due to that. Nick Whalen, we both like the Packers -4.5. Why don't you start and I'll pile on?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I'm with Adam on the Steelers this week. The Giants, I just got to put this stat out there because it's ridiculous. 2.2 yards per play last week against Philly. 2.2. That is far and away the lowest any team has put up this year. It'll probably be the lowest mark of the entire season. And if you watch that game, 2.2 feels high. I mean, they were just completely suffocated the entire game by that Eagles defense. But yeah, I like Green Bay this week. I'm surprised Adam's not on Green Bay. I feel like he's been the Packers guy, and he's been mostly correct so far this year. I will say, though, this line's a little suspicious to me, both this one and the Minnesota line on Thursday night. I see these and I'm like, man, this feels like it should be a couple points higher. We've actually seen a little bit of movement in favor of Jacksonville. There are some 4.5s out there. You can get it at 4 now in favor of Green Bay. You guys see the hat. I'm a Jaguars fan. I would love for Jacksonville to win this game. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know where the respect is coming from here. I know the Jaguars took care of business in London last week against New England. They also fell behind 10-0 in that game. They ended up getting a punt return for a touchdown that kind of swung the tides, but this is still not a good offense, and it's a really bad defense, right? It's a team that put together a 17-play drive against New England that finished for 0 points. It's a team that still struggles in the red zone, and you could say, Green Bay is maybe a little lucky to be sitting at 5-2 the way they won that game. They lost the turnover battle 3-0 last week against Houston, but I view that as, kind of a game that Green Bay would never have won over the last 4 or 5 years. I think you'd probably agree with me on that, Adam. What Packers defense is getting 4 straight stops to begin the second half like they did? I mean, this Green Bay defense is legit, man. The play that they're getting from Evan Williams at safety, they have the 2 highest rated safeties in the NFL right now at PFF between Williams and Xavier McKinney. And the Packers had forced at least 2 turnovers in every game this season coming into last week. Again, they lose the turnover battle 3-0. They still beat a good Houston team. You hold CJ Stroud under 100 yards. I think that turnover switch flips again this week. I think they turn over the Jags 2 or 3 times. I think this is, kind of another one of those reminder games that, Jacksonville's capable of putting together decent stretches against bad teams. I don't think it happens against Green Bay. I like the Packers to win this game by at least a touchdown.
And as I'm with you on that game, I noticed last week the Packers really figured some things out from a pressure standpoint. The pressure was pretty inconsistent. I noticed on one play, they started out with Rashawn Gary on the outside, and then all of a sudden, they didn't like the look, and Priestap, they motioned him to over the center, and it was beautiful. So they're starting Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinators, figuring out how to manipulate this person because he has talent, and we're starting to see that. And this is a good team to get that going against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think the line is closer than lower than it should be, like you said, Nick, because maybe the Jaguars won 2 of their last 3. They beat a bad Colts team without Jonathan Taylor, and they beat a decimated New England squad, as you mentioned earlier. This is not a good team. Defensively, they're a train wreck. They get Tyson Campbell back last week. So what? He's a decent corner. But ultimately, the Packers, and we saw it last year, Matt LaFleur will get this offense a little better every week, just putting together the ingredients. We're seeing, we've seen Romeo Doubs get integrated the last couple of weeks. Josh Jacobs playing well. They're going to keep getting these moving. They still haven't gotten Jaden Reed going since early in the season. This is a game get right spot. I just don't think this one's competitive. I think it gets ugly fast. So like you, I'm with the Packers. All right, last time around, we have consensus for 2-2. So we're going to have Adam start out. Actually, we're going to start with Bill. Bill, you're going to go with the Vikings, and then Nick's going to pile on because you both like the Vikings in this one.
Skull. I like this game a lot because the Vikings lost Sunday. Losing to the Lions, there's no shame there, even at home. That game went down to the last play. The Rams are still struggling with injuries. They barely beat the Raiders. This is going to be a home game for Minnesota and SoFi. That place is going to be packed. The Rams are terrible against the pass. They were worst in the league heading into last week, and they're 1-5 on the line. This is 2.5 points at DraftKings if you want to pay the extra big, or it's 3 elsewhere. I just really see, Minnesota's really well coached. They really seem to, have it together this year. I just think that this is a kind of, there's a Thursday night game. It'll be ugly. It'll be a mess. But they'll probably just kind of inch away and put it away in the fourth quarter, maybe win by 7 or 10.
Before we move to Nick to pile on, we had a question in the chat, and I thought it was a good question. Any idea why the Vikings are not more heavily favored against the Rams in this one? Bill, before I go to Nick, is there any thoughts that you think as to why this line seems low?
Well, I guess it's because, the Rams have been playing well defensively. And I just think that, again, that's why I like the fact that the Vikings lost. I have not heard any whispers about injuries. I don't, there's a presumption that, the books might know something that we don't, but I haven't seen anything. I just really think it's because of that loss and the fact that they gave up, 31 points at home, but the Rams are just really not producing offensively this year. And again, it's one of these games that'll be relatively low scoring, but, 7 to 10 point win. And Sam Darnold made some mistakes on Sunday, and that could be a concern too. I mean, he is Sam Darnold after all. I mean, you can take the man out of the Jets, but you can't take the Jets out of the man.
Love that. Nick Whalen, talk about this game as well. You like the Vikings also.
I do. And, I think like the question in the chat implies, it does feel like we might be walking into a trap here. This easily feels like it could be, 4.5 in favor of Minnesota, and the 2.5 is a little suspicious. So I'm approaching this still with some degree of caution. Obviously the return of Cooper Kupp influences things. I do wonder if, maybe the books are thinking that Aaron Jones might not be out there. He's been limited to begin practice this week, so that'll be something to monitor. Sean McVay also 9-1 ATS in his last 10 games on short rest. So that could be a factor, but at the end of the day, you just got to go with your heart here. I think Minnesota is the vastly better team. I thought the Rams looked terrible last week against a pretty bad Raiders defense. Stafford did not look dialed in whatsoever. Had it not been for the 3 interceptions and a defensive score for the Rams, I don't they might not win that game. They certainly, didn't even end up covering. So I like Minnesota here, and I'm not backing off of Minnesota because they lost against Detroit. Certainly it was a game that they probably should have won. You go up 2 scores early in the game. Lions are being a little reckless with the fake punt, but I also think Detroit is one of the 2 best teams in the NFL. So there's not really any shame in losing to that team by 2 points in what kind of was a Plinko game. It could have gone either way. I don't see a letdown here for Minnesota. If Aaron Jones is out, that definitely matters to me. And, we'll see what Cooper Kupp looks like, right? I mean, he's had a long layoff. It's a big piece to get back for the Rams, but it's kind of him, Kyron Williams, and Matthew Stafford. It's still a 3-man offense. It's still, to me, one of the worst defenses in the NFL. It's still one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And, we every week, if you're taking the Vikings, you're kind of falling back on Brian Flores and that defense. And I just don't think the Rams have enough pieces to keep up. So with it being a Thursday game, with the line being a little wonky, I do think I don't think this is a Vikings blowout by any means. Something weird will probably happen. But if we're getting this under 3, you got to take the Vikings at 2.5.
All right, before we get to our last pick, Adam and I will both go with the Dolphins. We'll have our final thoughts after that, and we'll recap all the picks. But, Adam, we both are going with the Dolphins. Why don't you start, and I'll pile on.
Yeah, and I'll add Minnesota is actually one of my top 5 picks as well at bookies.com/picks. Already posted right there. And it might be a play, keep your job game for Darnold against Stafford, who is rumored to be going to Minnesota. So you have that dynamic going on too, whatever that means. I like Miami against Arizona. I'll keep pounding the drum against the Cardinals. I have all year. I've said this is the worst defense in the league. They keep showing up sometimes, but now we're several weeks in, and they rank 26 versus the run. They rank 26 versus the pass. They allow 30.5 points a game on the road so far this season. And Miami, this offense was obviously built around Tua. Maybe a questionable decision, giving his concussion issues, but they have so many weapons. They've had nobody to get these guys the ball over the last several weeks. Now he is back. Is that a big enough deal? Yes, I think it is. -3 at home. I think we're going to see some frustrations let out. I think we're going to see a confidence boost for Miami, for everybody else that plays for Miami now that they have their QB back. So -3, I think that's a heck of a number to get for Miami.
I mean, there could not be a better matchup for Miami with Tua coming back. At home, Arizona, short week. They played the late Monday night game. They got to travel cross country. And then they have a defense. They don't have corners. They don't have passers. Dennis Gardeck, who was a decent passer, he's out for the season now. They've lost defensive line people. They have nothing. And the Dolphins will be able to unleash, like you said, everyone. We'll see Tua get the ball to Tyreek, to Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane. I think they hang 40 in this game. And here's the problem for Arizona. Arizona needs to be in a game script where James Conner can grind. This is not going to be that game script. They're probably going to get down double digits somewhat early, And if they got to go to a pass-only attack, they haven't unleashed Marvin Harrison. I like Michael Wilson, but certainly he's not going to scare Miami's defense. And Greg Dortch isn't scaring anybody. That leaves Trey McBride, and he's not keeping up with the Dolphins. So I think Miami rolls, as we've seen Miami roll in home games with Tua in much of the last couple seasons. I think they win this game something like 40-13. We'll see how that shakes out. All right, let's get to some closing thoughts here. Bill, why don't you give your last thought?
Well, after I remove my Vikings headgear, we got more headgear coming up next week. The national crackdown, I know it sounds dramatic, but we're on video. The national crackdown against Bovada continued this week in what had been previously announced. Bovada officially left Massachusetts. I believe it was on Monday. They received a cease and desist order from the state about 4 weeks ago. This is probably the fourth or fifth state this year where they've been asked to leave, and they're complying with these orders. Even though these states have no leverage, they've left Michigan, they've left Connecticut, they left a whole bunch of other jurisdictions, and they did it by simply being asked, which tells me a lot of other states with legal books are going to do the same thing, and B, I'm wondering if they're thinking about a long-term strategy of possibly trying to enter some of these markets legally down the road.
Let's go to Nick Whalen for your closing thought.
I want to see if we get another week for the public. There's been a nice rally over the last 2 weeks. Public was getting absolutely crushed through the first month of the season, but the 5 most bet sides at DraftKings this past week all came through. Big underdogs of at least 5.5 points went just 1-4 against the number over the last 2 weeks. Dogs of at least 5.5 points are now 2-7-1 against the spread. Those situations, they began the year on a 19-5-2 run. So we've seen quite the reversal over the last couple of weeks. And week 7 was another big week for road favorites, guys, which are now 12-0 straight up and against the number over the last 2 weeks of action. And we got a few of those spots again this week. Chiefs are big road favorites at the Raiders. We have the Ravens as 8.5-point favorites at Cleveland, and the Jets are big favorites at New England. So be very curious to see if that trend continues, or if we start to see the books start to earn some cash back this week.
Adam Thompson, give your closing thoughts for this week.
Well, we also have teams that we've mentioned here too, and the Vikings on the road as favorites, and the Packers on the road as favorites. So hopefully that continues for them. It seems like in this modern day of NFL, stopping the pass and throwing the ball are the keys. But I looked at the top. The top and the bottom passing defenses in the NFL. The 5 bottom defenses against the pass are the Ravens, the Vikings, the Buccaneers, and the Lions, as well as the Jaguars. 4 of those teams are potential Super Bowl contenders, if not playoff contenders, and 4 of them are division leaders right now. So running the ball and stopping the run might be making a flashback back to the 80s and 70s. It might be run control, ball control might be the way to win a title this year. That hasn't been the case really lately.
My last thought is the NFL always changes so fast. Sometimes a few weeks, we see a completely different landscape. We came into the season, I think, still believing the AFC was the class of the 2 conferences. Really isn't the case right now. Yes, the Chiefs are still at the top, and the Ravens look great. But outside of that, every other team has been shaky to some degree or another. Maybe the Bills get better with Cooper, but the NFC is the one that surprises. The entire NFC North, everybody is 4-2 or better. Nobody saw that coming. That is amazing. I saw the Commanders 5-2, the Seahawks 4-3. Maybe people saw that, but this has been amazing. And that's the point of these gambling shows. When you listen to us, we're always looking for these emerging trends, and that's what good bettors have to do, because the landscape changes all the time. You can't look back with a week 1 mentality when we're into this midpoint of the season. All right, let's recap the picks for this week. So Bill Speros has the Bears money line against the Commanders, Indianapolis, Houston under 46.5, and the Vikings -2.5. Nick Whalen agrees with Bill on the Vikings -2.5. Adam Thompson does as well off the record. Nick also likes the Packers at -4.5, which I agree with. And Nick also goes with the Chiefs -9.5. Adam goes with the Chargers -7. Steelers with Russ cooking -5.5. And Adam and I both agree on the Dolphins -3. And I agree with Bill on the Bears.
A lot of
lay the
agreement
2.5.
this week. Everybody, a lot of kumbaya going on this week. I don't know about that. I don't know what I think about that.
Well, we had pretty much a lot of agreement last week, and we had a great record. So let's hope that we're all seeing this the same way, and maybe
we need to band together here, boys. I like this.
That's right, consensus. Yep.
As long as we're winning, that's going to happen again this week. So everybody, this has been the Bookies Plus weekly gambling show. Be sure to bookmark bookies.com/picks so you can check out our free picks for both the NFL and other sports. There'll be a new episode. Remember, every Wednesday, the rest of the NFL season. We will see you next week.